Before we start, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It was late evening, and the quiet hum of the space heater filled my home office as I scanned through my financial statements like I did every Friday. My name is Michael Harlow. I'm a senior tax auditor in Portland, Oregon. Numbers don't lie to me. But tonight, one number did. There it was, a $2,800 withdrawal from one of our joint accounts. No label, no attached vendor, nothing. Just a cold line of digits disappearing from our balance like a ghost swipe. I leaned closer, rubbing my temple. No way, I murmured. I hadn't authorized anything near that amount. I stood up, quietly made my way down the hall, and found Stephanie, my wife, in the kitchen. She was pouring herself a glass of white wine, humming to some old Fleetwood Mac tune playing from the small speaker by the sink. "Steph," I said flatly, "can I ask you something?" She turned, startled by my tone. "Sure. What's up?" "There's a charge here, $2,800. Pulled from the joint account 3 days ago. I didn't touch that money. Did you?" Her body stiffened. Just a fraction, but I caught it. She gave a little shrug, too casual. "Huh, maybe it was something automatic? Did you check with the bank?" Of course I checked. It's not marked as a scheduled transfer, and there's no vendor listed. Stephanie took a slow sip of wine and turned back to the counter. "I don't know then," she said. "Maybe it's some accounting error. You'd know better than me." My jaw clenched. "Steph, don't do that. Don't toss this back at me like it's some math glitch. That's almost $3,000. I need to know where it went." She spun around, eyes sharp now. "Are you accusing me of something?" "I'm asking you for clarity," I replied, keeping my voice level. "Well, I don't know," she snapped, suddenly defensive. "Why would I take that kind of money and not tell you?" "That's exactly what I'm wondering." She exhaled sharply and crossed her arms. "Maybe it was a mistake. Or maybe your system's wrong. Why are you always so paranoid about money? Not everything's a case to solve, Michael. You think I'm paranoid because I'm asking about a missing $2,800. I took a step closer, lowering my voice. "That's not paranoia, that's partnership. Or at least, it used to be." Her face fell for a moment. A flicker of guilt? Or just annoyance? "I'm not doing this tonight," she said, brushing past me with her wine in hand. "Stephanie," I called after her, "this isn't over." But she was already walking out, leaving the scent of citrus detergent and cold suspicion behind her. "My name's Michael Harlow. I'm 38, I wear pressed shirts, drink my coffee black, and have worked 12 years auditing other people's secrets. Our home, a tidy craftsman near Laurelhurst Park, was built on mutual trust, shared passwords, and scheduled date nights. Or at least, I thought it was. And that number on the screen tonight? That was the first crack in the system. Tomorrow, I'd push for more answers. But tonight, I sat back down at my desk, staring at the screen like it might blink the truth back at me. The smell of buttermilk pancakes hit me before I even reached the bottom of the stairs. Stephanie never cooked on weekdays. She barely did on weekends. And yet here she was, humming softly, flipping golden brown pancakes on the griddle while bacon sizzled beside her. There was even fresh squeezed orange juice on the table, something I hadn't had since our second anniversary. I paused in the hallway for a second, watching her from behind. Her hair was down, soft waves resting on the shoulders of a pale blue robe I hadn't seen in months. She looked composed. Too composed. "Morning," she chirped without turning. "Morning," I said, slower, quieter. She placed a plate in front of my usual chair, then sat across from me, resting her chin in one hand like this was some lazy Sunday brunch and not the aftermath of a Cold War. "I thought you could use a treat today," she said. "You've been working nonstop." I looked at the plate. Pancakes, bacon, strawberries, sliced perfectly, edges neat, like she used to do when we first moved in together. She smiled, bright and practiced. "Eat before it gets cold." I took a bite, more out of habit than hunger. She watched me like she was waiting for a verdict. I chewed slowly, then set my fork down. "We're not doing this, Steph." Her smile faltered. "Doing what?" she asked, feigning confusion. "This performance. The food. The robe. The step forward, wife act. Just tell me what the $2,800 was for." Her gaze dropped to her mug. "I told you. I don't remember anything like that. Maybe the bank made a mistake. Maybe it was something we forgot about." I stared at her. "Stephanie, I don't forget. And banks don't just randomly lose $3,000. She gave a quiet laugh, not amused. Defensive. Well, maybe you should check your memory. You've been so stressed with work lately. Maybe you did move it and forgot. I kept my voice steady. I've triple-checked. It wasn't me. And I know that you know that. She leaned back in her chair, exhaling hard through her nose. Why are you interrogating me like one of your clients? Because I feel like one of mine just broke into my account. That landed hard. Her lips tightened. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The kitchen filled with the faint ticking of the wall clock and the scent of syrup cooling on the plate. I'm trying here, she finally said. I'm trying to make this morning feel normal. Normal would be honesty. Normal would be trust. I leaned forward slightly. Do you know what a false entry looks like, Steph? I've seen it 100 times. The vague ones are the worst. They're always hiding something. She swallowed. It's not what you think. Then what is it? She hesitated, fingers tightening around her mug. It might have been something I helped someone with, she said quietly. My stomach dropped. That was new. Who? I asked. It doesn't matter. It matters to me. She stood abruptly, picking up her plate. I'm not doing this. Not when you're sitting there judging me like I'm on trial. I stood too. You are on trial, Steph. In here, with me. She slammed the plate into the sink with a sharp clang and turned around, eyes shining with something I couldn't quite read. Anger, guilt, or maybe both. You want to know so badly? Fine. I helped a friend. She needed a loan. She was in a bad spot. I didn't want to worry you. A friend. I said slowly. She nodded. What friend? She didn't answer. Just turned her back and started rinsing the dishes. You're lying, I said quietly now. She froze, just for a second. That was all I needed. The mood turned cold again, like the thermostat had dropped 10 degrees. I watched her shoulders tense, and I didn't press further. Not yet. I picked up my coffee, took a slow sip, then walked past her toward the front door. I'll be working late tonight, I said as I slipped on my coat. No reply. Only the clatter of silverware in the sink. Behind me, the kitchen, the whole house, felt like it was holding its breath. The next morning at the office, I didn't even sit down before pulling up our joint account portal on my work monitor. My name's Michael Harlow, and I'm a numbers guy. And when something doesn't add up, I lock it down. 2 clicks later, our accounts were frozen. Access restricted. Cards blocked. The system pinged with a dull confirmation tone, and just like that, the door was closed. Stephanie wouldn't find out until the cards failed her, and that wasn't an accident. I didn't want to fight. I wanted the truth. And maybe, just maybe, this would push her far enough to finally give it up. At 3:41 p.m., my phone buzzed on the desk. Stephanie, mobile card just got declined at the store. Something wrong with the bank. 3 minutes later, Stephanie, mobile Mike? I'm standing in line with groceries. What's going on? I didn't respond. Just watched the typing dots come and go. And go. The rest of the workday passed in a fog. I wrapped up 2 case reviews, submitted a report, and drove home under a gray Portland sky thick with drizzle. When I walked in, Stephanie was already there, standing in the hallway, arms crossed, coat still on. You froze the accounts, she said, skipping any pretense. I nodded as I pulled off my jacket. Yeah. Why? You know exactly why. She blinked. No, I really don't, Michael. I was humiliated today. Do you know how it feels to have your card declined in front of 10 people? Do you know how it feels, I said calmly, to ask your wife for the truth and get a scripted breakfast and a lie about helping a friend? Her face flushed. So this is punishment. No, I said. This is a boundary. She let out a tight, bitter laugh. A boundary? Is that what we're calling it now? I don't know what you're hiding, I continued, walking past her into the kitchen, but I know it's big enough for you to lie twice, which means it's big enough for me to take precautions. She followed, voice rising. You think I'm stealing from you? Is that what this is? I turned to face her. No, I think you already did. That silenced her for a moment. Then she lowered her eyes and spoke more quietly. I didn't want it to be like this, Michael. Then you should have said something before $3,000 walked out of our life. I grabbed a glass of water and walked into the den, leaving her standing in the glow of the kitchen light. That night, she didn't come to bed. I found her curled up on the living room couch, wrapped in the thin gray throw we usually kept folded over the armrest. No pillow, still in jeans, 1 sock on. I stood in the hallway, watching her chest rise and fall. No words, no fight left. Just 2 people in 1 house, drifting further apart with every breath. The silence didn't just fill the space anymore. It changed the shape of it. Stephanie was right there, but the distance between us felt like 1,000 miles. And in that moment, something settled cold and heavy into my chest. Whatever this was, it wasn't just a rough patch. Something had broken. And deep down, I think she knew it too. It was just after lunch when Stephanie finally broke the silence. She stood in the doorway of my home office, sunglasses already on, purse slung over her shoulder like she'd rehearsed the pose. "I'm leaving for a few days," she said. I didn't look up from my screen. "Leaving where?" "Does it matter?" she replied quickly. "I need space. Don't call. Don't text. I'll reach out when I'm ready." That got my attention. I leaned back in my chair. "You vanish after a financial lie, and I'm not supposed to ask questions?" She crossed her arms. "You froze our money, humiliated me, and turned our house into a courtroom. I'm done engaging." "You still haven't told me where the money went," I said evenly. Her jaw tightened. "And I'm not going to." She turned and walked away before I could say another word. The front door closed with a soft click, not a slam. Worse than a slam. An hour later, I was already on the phone. "Evan Brooks," the voice said. "You said this was urgent." "It is," I replied. "I need a trace. Personal, not official." "Quiet." He paused. "You're still with the department?" "Yes." "Then you know I don't ask why," Evan said. "Send me the transaction details." By nightfall, we sat across from each other at a small table in a downtown cafe. Evan Brooks, private investigator, former financial crimes unit. The kind of man who noticed everything and reacted to nothing. He slid a manila envelope toward me. "That withdrawal," he said. "Hotel booking. 3 nights. Paid up front." I opened it. My chest tightened. "Same hotel," Evan continued, "that your wife checked into this morning." I looked up. She said she was leaving town. "She did," he said calmly. "Just not alone." He opened his tablet and turned it toward me. There she was, Stephanie, laughing, her hand on a man's arm as they entered the hotel lobby together. Another photo, them seated close at the bar. Another, elevator, his hand at the small of her back. I swallowed hard. "Who is he?" I asked. Evan didn't hesitate. "Dennis Carmichael." The name hit like a drop file drawer. "No," I said quietly. "Yes," Evan replied. "Dennis Carmichael. Married. Real estate holdings. Shell companies. And," he gave me a look, "very familiar to your professional circle." I exhaled slowly. "He's spoken at 3 tax conferences. And he's sloppy," Evan added. "Uses personal accounts when he shouldn't. This affair? Funded carelessly." I stared at the photos again. At the ease between them. At the lie I'd been living in. "So it wasn't a friend," I said. Evan shook his head. "No, it wasn't." I closed the envelope carefully. "Give me everything," I said. "But keep it clean." Evan nodded once. "Already doing it." As I drove home, the rain streaked across my windshield like static. Stephanie hadn't gone to clear her head. She'd gone to hide. And the man she chose to hide with? He'd just made the worst possible choice of husband to cross. The next afternoon, I found myself gripping the steering wheel outside a 2-story home tucked into a quiet cul-de-sac in Lake Oswego. Everything about the street looked untouched. Trimmed hedges, kids' bikes leaning against fences, wind chimes swaying gently in the breeze. It was the kind of place that made betrayal feel even colder. I sat in my car for a full minute before finally stepping out. The manila envelope was tucked under my arm, heavier than it should have been. The front porch creaked softly as I stepped up. A wreath of dried lavender hung on the door. I knocked once. A few seconds passed. Then the door opened. "Kara Carmichael?" I asked. She looked to be in her early 40s. Petite. Wavy chestnut hair tied in a low twist. No makeup, just soft lines around her eyes that deepened with concern. "Yes," she replied cautiously, clutching the edge of the door. "My name is Michael Harlow," I said. "I know this is unexpected, but I think we should talk. It's about your husband." Her expression froze for a heartbeat. "Dennis." I nodded once. "May I come in?" There was a long pause. Then she stepped aside silently. Inside, the house was warm, tastefully decorated, and smelled faintly of cinnamon. A golden retriever lifted its head from a nearby rug, but didn't bark. She gestured to the couch. I sat. She remained standing. Is he okay?" she asked, voice thin with worry. I held out the envelope gently. "I'm afraid not. But not in the way you're thinking." She took it slowly, her eyes flickering between me and the seal. She sat across from me, carefully peeled it open, and began pulling the photos out one by one. The silence stretched like glass between us. Her hands started trembling before she even got to the second photo. And then her breath hitched. "No," she whispered. I didn't speak. I let the silence carry the weight. She shuffled through the rest, Stephanie and Dennis laughing at the bar, holding hands in the hotel lobby, entering the elevator like they didn't have vows anchoring them to other lives. When she reached the last photo, she set it on her lap and pressed her palms to her face. Her shoulders trembled. Then the sobs came, hard, broken, uncontrollable. I sat quietly, hands folded in front of me. "I'm so sorry," I said softly. "I know how this feels. Too well." She looked up through tears. How long has this been going on?" "I just found out yesterday," I answered honestly. "But judging by the way they carry themselves, it's not new." She shook her head. "We have 2 boys. One's in middle school. The other's learning guitar. He helped him pick the songs." I didn't respond. What could I possibly say to that? "Why would he do this?" she asked, more to herself than to me. "Because people like Dennis think they can," I said quietly. Kara wiped her cheeks with the sleeve of her sweater. "You said your name was Michael?" I nodded. She looked at me, still stunned. "You didn't have to bring this. Most people would have just let it go." "I couldn't," I said. "Not when it's with my wife." Her eyes softened with realization. "Stephanie." I nodded again. "I'm sorry you had to find out like this. But you deserve to know. All of it." She stared down at the photos once more. Then I slid a card across the table. "I know a good divorce attorney. Sharp. Discreet. You'll need someone who won't blink when the money starts getting moved." She took the card slowly. "I don't know if I'm ready," she whispered. "I wasn't either," I replied. But the second they made their decision behind our backs, they started writing the ending for us. She nodded, swallowing hard. Outside, wind brushed against the windows. Inside, 2 strangers sat quietly, bound not by friendship, but by wreckage. And strangely, I think we both felt a little less alone. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the sky had gone dull with early evening clouds. The kind of Portland gray that made everything feel like it had been drained of color. The porch light flickered on automatically as I walked up the steps. I half expected to see Stephanie's car back in the drive, some attempt at damage control waiting inside. But the house was still empty. Quiet. Too quiet. I dropped my keys into the ceramic bowl by the door and headed straight for the kitchen, pouring myself a glass of water I didn't really want. My phone buzzed as I reached for it, and instinctively, I opened our call log. No missed calls from her. So I tapped her name. Waited. And that's when it happened. "This number is no longer accepting calls from your contact." I blinked. Called again. Same robotic voice. Blocked. I let out a small laugh, not out of amusement. Out of disbelief. She didn't just leave. She didn't just lie. She cut the cord completely, like I was some unstable ex she needed to escape. I scrolled through our old messages, thumb hovering. I almost typed something. Almost. But instead, I closed the thread and opened a new one. Linda Carrington, Stephanie's closest friend. Realtor. Always overcaffeinated. Always nosy. I didn't waste time with greetings. I just typed, "Tell Stephanie that Dennis's wife liked their photos." 3 dots popped up almost instantly, then vanished. Nothing came through after that. Didn't matter. The message landed, and I knew it would spread exactly the way I wanted it to. That night, I sat alone in the den. No TV, no music, just the soft buzz of the fridge humming from the kitchen. The room still looked the same. Bookshelf neat, coffee table clean, 2 matching armchairs that used to mean together. But now, it felt like a museum of a life that had already ended. The throw blanket still sat folded on the couch. Stephanie's mug, the one with the little blue line crack in the handle, was still in the drying rack. I could almost hear her voice in the room's silence. "Michael, you always overanalyze everything. Don't you ever just let go of control for a second?" "Control," she said, as if wanting the truth made me obsessive. But now, she was gone, and so was the truth. She had walked out with both. And yet, I didn't feel defeated. I felt something else. Calm. Not the good kind. The heavy kind. The quiet that settles after the explosion, when the smoke hasn't cleared, but you already know what's left isn't going back together. I sat there, staring into the low lamplight, running my thumb along the edge of the manila folder beside me. The photos, the names, the times. It wasn't over. She may have blocked me, but I was far from finished. If this part resonates, give the video a thumbs up. The front door burst open like it had been kicked. Stephanie came in fast, hair tangled, eyes wide, her coat half off like she hadn't even finished dressing before rushing here. She froze when she saw me sitting at the kitchen island. I didn't move, just kept slowly stirring the tea in my mug, watching the spoon circle the inside. Her voice cracked the silence. "You told Kara?" I looked up once. I did. Her bag dropped to the floor. "Michael, oh my God, you don't understand." "No," I said calmly. "I understand exactly." She blinked. "You blindsided me. You had no right. You had no right." My voice didn't rise. It cut. To spend our money on your affair. To block me like I was the problem. To walk into that hotel with another man and call it a vacation. Stephanie stepped forward, frantic now. It wasn't supposed to happen that way. I didn't plan for it. It just, don't, I said sharply. Don't insult me with the "it just happened" routine. Her shoulders sagged. Then the tears came. "I made a mistake," she whispered. I stood, walked slowly to the counter. "Let the mug rest there." "You didn't make a mistake," I replied. "You made arrangements. You booked rooms. You cleared your schedule. You gave him my time. You used our money." She covered her mouth like the words physically struck her. Her voice cracked into pieces. "I didn't think it would go this far." "It already went this far," I said, "the moment you chose silence over honesty." She moved toward me. "Please, Michael, we can fix this. I'll tell you everything. I'll cut off contact. We can go to therapy. Just don't let this be how it ends." I stared at her. The woman I'd shared holidays with, built routines around, argued with over laundry settings and takeout menus. She looked like a stranger now, panicked and small in the house we used to call ours. "I don't want therapy," I said. "I want peace. Michael, you need to pack your things." She froze. "What?" "You need to leave. Tonight." Her voice cracked. "Where am I supposed to go?" "I don't know," I said. "But this house isn't yours anymore." She stood there trembling, then took a shaky step back. "You're serious?" I nodded once. Stephanie stared at me, searching for something in my face. Rage, softness, hesitation. But I gave her nothing. Just stillness. "I never meant to lose you," she whispered. "You didn't lose me," I said. "You gave me away." She broke. Right there in the center of the kitchen, the dam finally gave out. She sobbed into her hands, knees buckling slightly, but I didn't move to help her. Not this time. A full minute passed like that. Then she turned, slowly walked toward the hallway, and disappeared into the bedroom. Drawers opened. Suitcases wheeled. An hour later, she walked past me again, mascara streaked, red-eyed, dragging 2 bags behind her. She stopped at the door. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I didn't answer. Just watched her open the door, step out into the night, and close it gently behind her. The sound was soft, but it was the loudest goodbye I'd ever heard. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the knock on my home office door turned into a shove. Dennis Carmichael barged in, his face flushed, eyes wild. He didn't bother closing the door behind him. He just stormed in like a man with nothing left to lose. "You think you're clever?" he snapped, pointing at me like I was some villain in his tragedy. "You think you can destroy everything I've built just because your wife?" "Careful," I said, not even rising from my desk. "You're in my house now." He slammed the door shut behind him, pacing across the rug like a trapped animal. "You told Kara? You humiliated her. You dragged my name through the mud." "No," I said, finally standing. "You did that." I just opened the blinds and let the light in. Dennis's mouth opened, but he didn't speak right away. His suit, the kind of tailored luxury that screams power, was wrinkled. His hair, usually slick and perfect, was unkempt. He looked tired, rattled. "You had no right," he muttered, lowering his voice slightly. "This wasn't your fight." "Then you should have stayed out of my life," I said coldly. "But you didn't. You wormed your way into it, into my home, my marriage, and then acted surprised when it caught fire." He pointed again, but his hand shook. "You don't know what this cost me." "I know what it cost me," I shot back. "A life, a home, a wife I trusted, and I'm still here, standing in it." Dennis stepped closer, trying to puff up. "You've made enemies, Michael." I tilted my head, unflinching. "That's supposed to scare me?" He stared at me for a long beat, breathing hard. But behind the rage in his eyes, I saw it. The thing he hadn't shown anyone else yet. Fear. You think this ends with your little revenge stunt, he said. You think this is over? I walked around the desk slowly, stopping inches from him. I think, I said steadily. You're realizing that everything you built was paper thin. That Kara was your shield. That your reputation bought you silence. And now, none of that is left. His jaw tightened. You crossed a line, Dennis. I finished, voice low. Now face the consequences. The silence between us grew so loud it buzzed. Then, for a moment, he looked like he might swing. But instead, he stepped back. Defeated. He straightened his jacket, looked around like he'd forgotten where he was, and quietly turned toward the door. No threats. No final word. Just a slow retreat from the space he thought he could dominate. As he stepped outside, the door clicked shut, not slammed. Almost politely. I stood there for a moment, letting the quiet fill the room again. He'd come in with fire, left in smoke. And for the first time in weeks, I felt the scales begin to level. Courtrooms don't feel like justice. They feel like paperwork. Cold chairs. Air vents that hum too loud. But that morning, sitting at the claimant's table across from Stephanie, I didn't feel cold. I felt done. She wore a black blazer, hair pulled tight, makeup careful, like she was trying to look remorseful without looking ruined. I kept my eyes forward. The judge, a woman in her late 50s with wire-rimmed glasses and no patience for drama, flipped through the documents. My documents. Phone records. Financial statements. Hotel bookings. The photos. The withdrawals. Stephanie's lawyer tried the usual spin. Emotional confusion. Marital tension. Stress. The temporary lapse in judgment, defense. The judge held up a page. A lapse with a $2,800 hotel receipt, she asked dryly. And 2 nights, not one. Stephanie didn't meet my eyes. An hour later, it was done. Primary residence remains with Mr. Harlow, the judge stated. Minimal alimony due to clear evidence of marital misconduct. Joint assets divided on a 75/25 basis in favor of the petitioner. I exhaled quietly. Stephanie looked like the breath had left her completely. I didn't smirk, didn't gloat. I just stood, gathered my documents, and left the courtroom with the same calm I'd entered it. But I wasn't finished. Not with Dennis Carmichael. It started the next morning. I made 2 phone calls. One to the IRS compliance tip line. One to a friend at the Oregon Department of Revenue. Both calls were short, polite. I simply asked them to take a closer look at certain business deductions flagged on his filings. Anonymous. 3 days later, I filed a formal concern under my own credentials. Not personal, professional. I attached documentation that raised questions about the valuations Dennis had submitted for his real estate trust. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity. I knew how to write a report that made other auditors want to flip every page twice. Soon, Dennis's flagship project in Beaverton, a luxury condo development, hit a pause. Then another. Permits began being reevaluated. Contractors started pulling back. By week 2, a quiet audit was underway. Week 3, a second one opened, federal. Someone inside leaked word that the valuation of several holdings had been inflated. The cracks were widening. By week 4, whispers followed Dennis everywhere. The same man who once walked into rooms with a crowd behind him now looked over his shoulder more than he smiled. No headlines. Not yet. But the pressure was on. And I knew exactly where to keep pushing. Because this wasn't just about my marriage anymore. It was about a man who thought he could take what wasn't his and walk away like it never mattered. Now every asset he tried to protect was under scrutiny. Every number, every inflated contract, every too clean receipt. I didn't lie. I didn't twist. I just pointed people toward the truth and let it do the rest. Stephanie had walked away with a fraction. Dennis was watching his empire turn to sand. And me? I had peace. Not because I'd won, but because I'd earned it, one quiet, calculated move at a time. I was finishing up a quarterly audit report when I heard the knock, 3 slow thuds on the glass outside my office door. I glanced up. Dennis Carmichael. But not the Dennis I remembered from the conference stages and networking mixers. This man looked hollowed out. His tailored suit hung loose around his shoulders. The tan was gone. The eyes were bloodshot. I didn't invite him in. He opened the door anyway. 5 minutes, he said, his voice hoarse. That's all I'm asking. I leaned back in my chair. Then don't waste a second. He closed the door behind him, walked to the edge of the desk, and didn't sit. I lost Kara, he said. She took the boys. Filed for divorce the day after you showed her those photos. I didn't reply. My name's trashed. The board pulled me from the expansion talks. 2 investigations are active. 3 partnerships dropped in the last 10 days. My phone barely rings unless it's bad news. He rubbed his face with both hands. You've made your point. Okay, I get it. I didn't do this, I said calmly, eyes on him. You did. He looked at me. Really looked, and something in his chest caved in. My dad built that company from scratch, he whispered. And I've been keeping it alive. The Carmichael name used to mean something in this town. Now people cross the street when they see me. I turned back to my screen, clicked the next page in the report. I just wanted to stop, Dennis said. The audits. The push. The quiet calls. You've proven whatever you needed to prove, all right? I looked up slowly. You came into my life uninvited. You wrecked a marriage. You thought I'd just let it pass. I didn't think. Exactly, I cut in. You didn't think. About Stephanie. About Kara. About your own kids. And definitely not about the man who built his career spotting liars. Dennis's face crumpled. I don't have anything left, he said quietly. I wake up and stare at the ceiling for an hour before I even move. I lost her. I lost the business. I've lost, he paused, swallowing hard, myself. I nodded slowly, then went back to typing. That was it. No smug lines. No final warning. Just paperwork. He stood there for another second, waiting for something. Forgiveness, maybe. I didn't give it. He turned, walked out, and closed the door gently behind him. The silence that followed was the cleanest breath I'd taken in months. Not victory, just closure. It had been 4 months since the court signed off on the divorce decree. 4 months since Dennis walked out of my office with his shoulders caved in and his legacy unraveling behind him. And 4 months since Stephanie officially moved out of my life. Not just from the house, but from the space in my head she used to rent without permission. My Saturdays had a rhythm again. I woke up early, brewed my own coffee, took my walk along the Willamette, through that stretch of Riverside Park near Selwood. Nothing fancy, just me, a light jacket, and the scent of cedar and distant water. I like the quiet now, the real kind, not the fake peace we used to keep between tense dinners and avoided conversations. This morning, the air was crisp. Light fog hovered over the river's surface. I passed joggers, dog walkers, couples in deep conversation. Then I saw her. Kara. She stood near a bench, tossing crumbs to a pair of ducks waddling toward her feet. I hadn't seen her since court. We'd exchanged a short email afterward, a simple thank you from her, and a short reply from me, but nothing else. I slowed down, debating whether to pass by unnoticed. But then she looked up and smiled. Not politely, genuinely. Michael, she said softly. Hi. Hey. I replied, hands tucked in my pockets. Didn't expect to see you here. I come every weekend, she said. Been doing it for years. Dennis never liked walking. I gave a quiet nod. Seems we have more in common than we thought. She chuckled, not bitterly, just lightly. Guess so. We stood in silence for a beat, watching the ducks flap at each other over crumbs. How are things? She asked. I shrugged. Quiet. Simple. Good, actually. She looked down at her shoes. Same here. I moved out of Lake Oswego. Got a place closer to my sister. The boys are adjusting. I'm glad, I said. Another pause. But this one didn't feel awkward. It just felt settled. She gestured to the bench. Want to sit? I did. We sat there for 20 minutes, maybe more. Talking about small things. Her son's guitar recital, a tax seminar I'd spoken at. Her attempt at baking sourdough. Disaster. Brick. No talk about the past. No name dropping of exes. Just 2 people with open air between them. At one point, she laughed. A full, unfiltered sound that made a few nearby kids turn. It surprised me how much I liked hearing it. After a while, she stood. Well, I should get going. The boys are probably burning toast. I stood too. I'll see you around. She smiled again. I hope so. And just like that, she walked off, scarf trailing behind her in the breeze. I didn't chase the moment. I just stood there watching the river. The ducks. The trail ahead. Not rushing toward anything. Not trying to fix what broke. Just breathing in what was finally mine again, peace. But deep down, I also knew something else. From the ashes of everything that had collapsed, something steady might just be starting to grow. And this time, I wouldn't ignore it. Not out of hope, but because it felt earned. And that was the end of my story. Kara could have stayed in denial. kept her perfect life on display, and ignored the truth I handed her. But she didn't. She faced it. She left. So I've got to ask you, did she do the right thing? Or would you have walked away differently? Let me know in the comments. And if this story hit something real for you, don't forget to like and subscribe.